Words are powerful, yet they often fail to reach the depth of understanding that silence can convey. In the quiet between breaths, in the pause between sentences, and in the spaces where nothing is spoken, truth reveals itself. Silence is not emptiness, it is presence, awareness and clarity. While words can mislead, divide or confuse, silence communicates in a language beyond intellect, touching the core of being directly. Silence communicates in ways that words cannot. When a person stops speaking and simply exists with attention and awareness, a powerful presence is conveyed. The stillness of being fully present communicates care, focus and understanding more profoundly than any sentence or explanation could. It is in this quiet presence that trust and connection are established. The absence of words allows subtle expressions to emerge. Gestures, posture, breathing, and even the smallest movements carry meaning that would be overlooked in constant speech. In silence, these unspoken signals are magnified, giving depth and clarity to the interaction. The mind begins to notice what is truly important rather than being distracted by the chatter of conversation. Silence encourages full attention. When the mind is not consumed by the act of formulating responses, it is free to observe, perceive and resonate with the other person or situation. Presence is no longer divided, it becomes whole and undistracted. This concentrated awareness conveys understanding, empathy and sincerity far beyond the reach of words. Being present in silence also impacts the self. By pausing speech and observing, the mind learns restraint, focus and attentiveness. Awareness deepens as the habitual need to fill space with words diminishes. The individual becomes attuned to subtleties of thought, emotion and environment that would otherwise remain unnoticed, cultivating a state of calm and centeredness. Silence as presence transforms interactions and perception. Communication becomes authentic, meaning is conveyed without distortion, and relationships are strengthened through unspoken connection. The act of simply being fully present, without needing to explain or comment, holds a power and clarity that words alone can never achieve. Silence allows the mind to perceive what words often conceal. When conversation stops, gestures, expressions and subtle movements become clear. The eyes, the posture and the tone of someone's presence communicate more truth than spoken sentences, and the mind learns to observe deeply, noticing what is usually overlooked. Beyond external cues, silence reveals unspoken emotions. Joy, sorrow, tension and longing are often hidden behind polite conversation or hurried explanations. In quiet, these emotions emerge naturally, allowing the observer to understand the depth of experience without interpretation or assumption. The mind perceives directly beyond the filters of speech and reason. Observing in silence cultivates awareness. When attention is not consumed by speaking or responding, it expands to subtleties in the environment and in oneself. Thoughts, impulses and hidden reactions become visible, giving clarity to intentions and actions. This heightened observation allows to act with purpose rather than habit. The power of observing beyond speech is not limited to others. Silence enables the mind to notice its own patterns, biases and tendencies. By observing without distraction, a person uncovers habits and reactions that normally go unnoticed, allowing for self-correction and deeper understanding of personal behavior and thought processes. Through this process, communication transcends words. Understanding, empathy and insight emerge naturally without need for explanation or debate. Silence becomes a bridge, connecting minds and hearts with clarity and depth that words cannot match. Observation in quiet transforms perception and strengthens connection in ways that constant speech never can. Silence creates the conditions for the mind to see clearly. When the constant noise of words and thoughts ceases, The mind can slow down and observe without distraction. Endless talking and rushing activity often cloud perception, leaving understanding fragmented and shallow. In quiet, patterns, connections, and truths emerge that were previously obscured. Quiet allows reflection on what has been experienced, heard, or observed. The mind can organize information, weigh options, and discern what is essential. Reflection in silence is not passive, it is an active engagement of awareness that sharpens insight and strengthens understanding. Without this space, clarity cannot fully arise, and decisions are often reactive rather than intentional. Silence sharpens attention. In the absence of external noise, the mind notices details and subtleties that go unnoticed during constant conversation or distraction. Thoughts that were previously buried or overlooked come into focus, revealing insights and solutions that were hidden beneath the chaos of constant speech. Awareness deepens and perception becomes precise. Clarity through quiet also strengthens intuition. When the mind is free from incessant chatter, subtle inner signals are easier to detect and trust. Ideas and understanding emerge naturally without force or effort. In this stillness, the mind can perceive truth directly, beyond reasoning, assumptions, or the influence of external voices. By cultivating quiet, the mind gains power over thought and perception. Decisions become deliberate, insight becomes reliable, and understanding becomes profound. Silence transforms the mind from a reactive instrument into a clear, discerning observer. In this state, clarity is not just an intellectual understanding, but a felt certainty that guides action and deepens awareness of life itself. True listening requires the mind to be fully present and free from the urge to respond or judge. Most conversations are filled with partial attention, as the listener prepares their reply while the other person is still speaking. Silence allows the mind to stop planning responses and simply absorb what is being conveyed, creating the conditions for genuine understanding. Listening deeply is more than hearing words, it is perceiving the emotions, intentions, and subtleties behind them. The tone pauses, and unspoken cues carry meaning that words alone cannot express. In silence, the mind becomes receptive to these layers of communication, understanding the essence of what is being conveyed rather than just the literal content. When the mind is not preoccupied with speaking or reacting, it can focus entirely on the present moment. Attention sharpens and the listener becomes attuned to the energy, mood, and unspoken signals of the speaker. This allows connection on a level that transcends verbal communication, creating resonance and empathy between individuals. Deep listening also fosters patience and self-awareness. The listener learns to pause, to tolerate stillness, and to resist the impulse to interrupt or dominate the conversation. In this process, the mind observes its own tendencies and habits, cultivating discipline, attentiveness, and presence that enhance both understanding and personal growth. By engaging in deep listening, silence becomes a bridge between people, revealing meaning and truth that words alone cannot convey. The listener perceives the full depth of communication, capturing what is often left unspoken, and relationships are strengthened through awareness, empathy, and genuine connection. Silence allows understanding to flow naturally and completely. Pauses in communication are not empty spaces, they carry significance that words alone cannot convey. Every pause allows the mind and heart of the listener to absorb, reflect, and feel what has been expressed. Without these pauses, speech becomes a stream of information that can overwhelm or be forgotten, but with them, meaning is amplified and understanding deepens. The pause creates space for reflection. It allows the listener to consider what has been said, to connect it with their own experience, and to grasp the underlying essence of the message. This space is where insight occurs, where the mind moves beyond surface level comprehension into true awareness of the ideas being communicated. Pauses also convey emotion and intention. A moment of silence can communicate hesitation, emphasis, respect, or gravity more effectively than any elaboration. The rhythm of speech, punctuated by stillness, mirrors the natural cadence of thought and feeling, allowing the listener to sense the depth behind the words. In addition, pauses train the speaker in awareness and presence. By choosing when to pause, the speaker becomes mindful of their words, intentions, and timing. This intentional stillness cultivates clarity, precision, and impact, transforming ordinary communication into a conscious act that resonates more powerfully. The power of pauses transforms both speech and listening. Silence interwoven with words enhances comprehension, deepens emotional resonance, and creates space for understanding that is beyond verbal explanation. Pauses allow communication to breathe, making every word meaningful and every silence profound. Silence is not only the absence of external noise, but also the gateway to observing the inner world. When the mind is free from distraction, it turns inward and notices the flow of thoughts, emotions, and impulses that normally go unnoticed. This internal awareness allows a person to understand themselves more deeply, revealing patterns and tendencies that shape behavior. By observing thoughts without judgment, the mind begins to differentiate between fleeting impulses and deliberate intentions. This clarity helps in choosing responses consciously rather than reacting automatically. Awareness of internal processes creates a sense of control and mastery over the mind, allowing actions to align with purpose rather than habit. Emotions that are usually buried beneath daily activity surface in silence. Fear, anger, joy, or sadness can be felt fully and examined without suppression. This process cultivates emotional intelligence as the individual learns to respond to feelings with understanding rather than being overwhelmed by them. Awareness turns emotional turbulence into insight and composure. Internal awareness also sharpens perception of subtle impulses and intuition. The quieter the mind becomes, the more it can detect the subtle signals that guide decisions, reveal truths, and highlight opportunities. This deep attunement strengthens judgment and allows one to navigate life with precision, confidence, and insight. Cultivating internal awareness transforms silence into a tool of growth. The mind becomes disciplined, the heart more perceptive, and the self more grounded. In this stillness, a person discovers clarity, resilience, and understanding that are inaccessible in constant noise, making silence an indispensable guide for insight and self-mastery. Words are fragile carriers of meaning, easily twisted, misunderstood, or limited by personal interpretation. Even the clearest sentences can be perceived differently by each listener, filtered through their experiences, biases, and assumptions. The more complex the idea, the greater the chance that language will distort its essence. Silence removes this risk entirely. When nothing is said, there is no opportunity for misinterpretation or confusion. Presence, attention, and observation communicate truth directly, bypassing the filters and judgments that often cloud understanding. The essence of communication becomes immediate and clear, felt rather than debated. In silence, intention becomes perceptible without explanation. The energy, sincerity, and focus of a person are transmitted without the limitations of vocabulary or grammar. The listener senses authenticity and meaning directly, creating understanding that is deeper, more immediate, and more reliable than words can achieve. Freedom from misunderstanding also applies to oneself. Observing internal silence allows reflection and self-awareness without the distortion of mental chatter or reactive thinking. Thoughts and emotions can be perceived clearly, without judgment, giving insight into patterns that are normally obscured by the noise of constant verbalization. By embracing silence, relationships and interactions gain clarity and depth. Miscommunication diminishes, intentions are recognized accurately, and understanding becomes direct and profound. Silence communicates in a language that transcends words, removing the risk of distortion and connecting people to truth, presence, and insight in a way that speaking often cannot. Silence provides the mind and heart with the space they need to process experiences that are often overlooked in the business of life. Without the pressure of constant activity or conversation, thoughts and emotions can surface naturally, allowing the individual to observe, understand, and make sense of what has occurred. This observation is not judgment but conscious acknowledgement which lays the foundation for true healing. In quiet, emotional wounds are given room to breathe and transform. Pain, disappointment, grief or anger that is suppressed in daily life can be felt fully without distraction or avoidance. By confronting these emotions directly, the mind begins to release their hold, and the heart experiences a natural restoration of balance and calm. Healing becomes an organic process rather than a forced or rushed attempt to move on. Reflection in silence strengthens insight and understanding. When external noise is removed, the mind can review events, choices, and interactions with clarity. Patterns emerge, lessons become visible, and previously hidden truths reveal themselves. This reflective process allows the individual to integrate experiences consciously, turning them into wisdom rather than letting them remain as unexamined reactions. Silence also cultivates self-compassion. By observing inner thoughts and emotions without judgment, a person learns to accept themselves fully, including their mistakes and vulnerabilities. This acceptance allows the mind and heart to let go of blame, resentment or guilt, fostering emotional resilience and inner peace. Healing is not only about resolving past pain, but also about creating a supportive inner environment for growth. Through consistent engagement with silence, the process of healing and reflection becomes transformative. Experiences are integrated more deeply, emotional balance is restored, and clarity of thought is enhanced. The mind and heart emerge strengthened, wiser, and more attuned, demonstrating that the absence of noise is not emptiness, but a fertile space where understanding, recovery, and personal growth naturally arise. Some of the deepest truths cannot be captured by words alone. Emotions like love, grief, or joy carry a richness and complexity that language often flattens or misrepresents. Attempting to explain them with speech reduces their depth, leaving much of their essence unexpressed. Silence, however, allows these truths to be communicated naturally and authentically. In silence, the subtleties of emotion become visible through presence, gesture and expression. A look, a touch, or a shared moment can convey more than paragraphs of speech ever could. The heart recognizes meaning directly without needing translation into words, creating connection and understanding on a profound level. Silence also allows the mind to perceive what is unsaid. The pauses, the hesitations, and the unspoken energy between people carry meaning. These spaces speak volumes, revealing intentions, emotions, and truths that are inaccessible to verbal explanation. In this way, silence becomes a language of its own, rich and precise. Communicating through silence requires attentiveness and openness. Both the one expressing and the one receiving must be present and fully aware. This shared awareness creates resonance and understanding, allowing emotions to be felt and absorbed in their purest form. Words may describe, but silence embodies the truth. Stillness allows the mind to slow down and perceive what is often overlooked in the rush of activity. In silence, habitual patterns and distractions fade, revealing the subtle movements of thought and emotion that shape perception. By observing these currents without interference, awareness deepens and the mind becomes capable of seeing reality more clearly. Through stillness, intuition is sharpened. When the mind is quiet, subtle insights arise naturally, unfiltered by fear, desire, or habitual thinking. Decisions and actions become guided by this inner clarity rather than reaction, allowing understanding and choice to emerge from a place of presence rather than impulse. Relationships are transformed by the practice of stillness. Being fully present in silence conveys attention, empathy, and understanding that words often cannot express. Others sense the authenticity and calm that stillness generates, creating deeper connection, trust, and resonance in communication. Silence is not emptiness, but a language of presence, depth, and truth. Words come and go, but silence lingers, touching the heart and mind directly. By embracing silence, we learn to see beyond appearances, hear what is unspoken, and connect with life and ourselves in ways that words alone can never achieve. In silence, understanding is immediate, profound, and transformative.